Hi everyone, this is Tex at Orbiter Forum. I've remade my Delta Glider 4 to ISS tutorial, fixing a few things, hopefully improving on it a little, making it easier for people to understand, especially the beginners. It is focused mainly for beginners, but hopefully everyone can get some kind of enjoyment out of it. So thanks for watching, and let's go ahead and get started. First of all, you are going to need the Orbiter Core Distribution 2006 P1 edition, along with Dan Steff's Delta Glider 4 add-on and Orbiter Sound 3.5. If you don't have those installed already, you will need to go ahead and install those and then go ahead and continue on with this tutorial. So when you're ready, we'll go ahead and launch the correct scenario. We're going to go to the Delta Glider 4 folder here, and then we're going to double click on the Earth Scenery folder here. And finally, we're going to launch the Landed Departure to ISS tutorial here. And your screen should now look something like this after it's loaded in the sim. Okay, now the first step for a successful rendezvous maneuver takes place before launch. You should launch into an orbit with as little inclination to the orbital plane of the target as possible. This means waiting until the orbital plane of the target passes through your launch site, and you can use the map MFD to monitor this. As you can see over here, this is ISS selected as a target, and this is its orbital plane right here. And we are right here at Cape Canaveral. Let's zoom in. You can see we are right here, and its orbital plane is currently passing through our launch site. So this is our launch window. By launching at the right time and into the right direction, you can minimize the need for later corrections of the orbital plane. So in this case, you can see ISS is traveling to the northeast. So we're in the launch window. We're going to go ahead and launch, and we're going to fly a heading of about 42 degrees, or northeast, thereabouts, is close enough, and it will get your orbital plane pretty close to ISS. We will have to tweak it once we're in orbit. So now let's go ahead and launch and get into orbit. Okay, so we've established that we are in our launch window right now. We just need to go ahead and get the Delta Glider 4 set up for takeoff. So let's go ahead and pull up the Surface MFD over here. And over here on the right side, let's pull up the Orbit MFD. And we're going to hit the PRJ button one time, so PRJ should now read ship. And we're going to hit the distance button one time. That'll give us an altitude readout right there. Let's go ahead and hit Control down arrow, and we can go ahead and program the autopilot. We're going to hit Pro 903 Spec 42 Enter, Execute. And now the autopilot will take off for us and climb up through the atmosphere and get us into an orbit at a heading of 42 degrees. As soon as you get off the ground, the autopilot will raise your gear. While that's happening, you can hit Control up arrow. When your gear's up, go ahead and turn off the gear hydraulic pressure, and hit Control down arrow again to get to this view. And at this point, you're just going to ride the autopilot up through the atmosphere and into orbit. The next part of the tutorial will discuss aligning the orbital plane. All right. Now that we're in orbit, we need to align our orbital plane with ISS. First, let's hit H twice and bring up the orbit HUD. Next, we can come over to the left MFD or the right, doesn't matter, and select the Align Plane MFD, hit Target, Enter, ISS, Enter. And now we've selected ISS as a target. Since we timed our launch when ISS was passing over our launch site, and since we launched in the right direction, we'll only have to make a minor plane change burn. To do any plane change burn, you'll always use either the normal or the anti-normal attitude autopilot, depending on the approaching node. So we need to determine which node we're approaching. If you look at the Align MFD, you see AN and DN. AN is ascending node and DN is descending node. Right here you see P, this represents our location, and if you watch the display you can see this is our direction of travel around the Earth. So we're approaching an ascending node. If you're approaching a descending node, then we'll use the normal attitude autopilot here. That's normal. If we're approaching an ascending node, then we'll use the anti-normal attitude autopilot here. And since we're approaching an ascending node, we're going to use the anti-normal autopilot. It will always be this way. Just remember, ascending node, you burn anti-normal. Descending node, you burn normal. So, the ship is being positioned for the burn, but we need to know when to burn. Right here where it says kill thrust, that will start flashing and tell you when to burn. And it'll also tell you that you need to be burning anti-normal in this case because we're approaching ascending node. But if you want to know ahead of time when the burn is coming up, you can look at these numbers, TTHA and TTHD, and look at TN. When TN reaches half of this value right here, then this is going to start flashing and tell you to burn. So at this point, we just need to coast around, and as TN counts down, when this number, TN, time to node, reaches half of this number, it'll start flashing and it'll tell me to burn anti-normal. So we'll come back whenever we reach the align plane burn, and we'll align the plane. Okay, it's almost time for the burn. We're just watching the align MFD over here and just waiting for it to tell us to burn. Any second now. Here we go. It's telling us engage thrust, orbit normal, which is actually anti-normal, the minus right here. So we're set up, we're facing the right direction, and we're burning, and we're watching TTHA and TTHD count down. The object is to get that as close to 0 as possible. Relative inclination right here, you want to get that as close to 0 as possible. You can see both of those counting down. So as they approach 0, we're going to pull back on the thrust just a little bit. Once it gets close, here we go. And that's as close to 0 as we're going to get right now. Now, what we can do to get relative inclination is at 0.03. In order to get that on 0, we just need to coast around to this ascending node again. See, what happened is it just rotated around. So we're right here. We just want to coast around until we're basically at the ascending node, and we're going to make just a small little burn. I mean, it's just going to take just a tap facing the way we're currently facing, anti-normal, and that'll bring relative inclination down. So let me speed time up just a little bit, and you can watch me coast around here, coast back around to the ascending node. And once we're about there, we'll go ahead and engage the anti-normal attitude autopilot again. And slow time down now. Anti-normal autopilot is engaged. Watching TN. Once TN reaches basically 1, we're going to go ahead and just do a short burst. And you can use your translation thrusters too to get precise. So right now, just do a short burst. Oops, too much. Translate back. There we go. Relative inclination is now 0 right here, and that's good. So that means our plane is aligned. If you want to see a visual reference, you can pull up the map MFD, and if ISS should already be selected as a target, but if it's not, go ahead and select it. Right here you can see target orbit is ISS, and if we zoom in, this yellow plus right here, there's ISS, and here we are, and our orbital plane is perfectly overlapped with ISS. So we are aligned and we're ready to synchronize the orbits. Alright, now that we're ready to synchronize our orbit, this is the process of getting closer to our target. If our current orbit altitude is lower than that of ISS, then we're actually traveling faster than ISS, as we're flying a shorter path around the Earth. If we were higher than ISS, it would be the other way around. We would be traveling a longer distance around the Earth and therefore slower than ISS. So by changing orbit altitudes, we can get closer to an object. The best solution is to look at the map MFD. If ISS is closer in front of us than behind, we would want to catch ISS, so we would want to speed up. But if ISS was closer behind us on the map MFD than it was in front, then we would want to slow down and let ISS catch us. So look at the map MFD here. You can see ISS is just in front of us. So clearly we want to speed up so we can catch ISS. But where do we do that? What we need to do is go ahead and pull up the orbit MFD over here, and we need to hit target and select ISS. And then over here, let's pull up the sync MFD and hit target and select ISS. Okay, now in order to set up a rendezvous point, the rendezvous point is where you will actually meet ISS just before you dock with it, and you want that to be on the daylight side of the Earth. So the rendezvous point is always going to be set up on the complete opposite side of the Earth. So if you want to do it at sunrise, giving you an entire hour to dock with ISS in daylight, then you would want to actually do your burn to set your rendezvous point at sunset. Okay, so right now we're on the dark side of the planet. We need to coast around through sunrise and to sunset before we do our burn. So let's go ahead and face prograde. You can engage the prograde autopilot right there. And we're just going to speed time up, facing prograde. And again, like I said, we're just going to go through sunrise, and we'll slow down at sunset right here. Go ahead and get to normal time and turn prograde autopilot back on here. Okay, so if you look at the orbit MFD, let's get rid of these numbers so you can see better. Right here, the gray circle is the Earth, and the green circle is our flight path around the Earth, and the orange circle is ISS's flight path around the Earth. The green line right here is our current position, and the orange line right here is ISS's current position. We're going to do, as you can see, we're lower. Our altitude is currently lower than ISS. ISS is a little bit higher than us. So what we want to do is we want to do a prograde burn, because what prograde is going to do is raise our orbit on the other side of the Earth, and we need to match our orbit over here to get a rendezvous point. So let's go ahead and real quick look here at ISS's altitudes. PEA is its lowest part of its orbit is at 343 kilometers, and APA, its highest point of its orbit, is at 354 kilometers. So we're just gonna raise our APA up to about say 350 kilometers, because we don't know exactly what its altitude is at our rendezvous point yet. Okay, so we're facing prograde. We're going to watch APA right here and just do a small burn until APA reads 350 kilometers. Right there, that's good enough. 351.1. Okay, so let's move these numbers again. Right here, this is our APA. We just raised that up to 351 kilometers. But we need to know what ISS's altitude is at that exact point. So we're just going to coast around, watching ISS coast around to that point, and then make a note of its altitude when it is over that point. So let me speed time up, watching ISS coast closer to our point here. Almost there. Right there. ISS is at 350.1 kilometers at our rendezvous point. So we need to write that down. 350.1 kilometers. Now what we need to do is we need to coast back around where we were, back over here, and face prograde and do a very small, using translation thrusters, just translate back a little bit. You can see our APA right here is currently at 351.1. Well, ISS's altitude there was 350.1, so we just need to bring it down a little bit. So we're just going to coast around to this point right here and face prograde once we get there. Almost there. Okay, we're at normal time. Translations, and again, we're just going to watch APA right here. It's 351.1. We need to get it to 350.1. Translate back a little bit. There's 350.2 and 350.1. So we have a perfect rendezvous point right here. Our altitude right there is exactly what ISS's altitude is right there. So now all we need to do is use the sync MFD to figure out or to actually synchronize our orbit so that we can meet ISS at that point. We know that this point right here is our APA, highest point of our orbit. So let's go to the sync MFD and hit mode and change it till reference reads ship APA, ship apoapsis, right there. See right there? Our rendezvous point is over there. We want mode on the sync orbit MFD to be the same. And again, it's the same thing you're looking at right here. This is ISS's position going around. This is our position going around. And from this point on, the only burns we're going to do is at our rendezvous point right here. When we reach our rendezvous point, that is the only place we'll do our burns, and it's either going to be a prograde burn or it's going to be a retrograde burn. The point is, the object is to get DT min to 0. So we're just going to coast around to there, to our rendezvous point. ISS is passing our rendezvous point now, and we're approaching it. We'll slow time back down and face prograde. At this time, let's go ahead and hit Control down arrow and make sure our retro doors are open, because we may need to use the retro engines. And you can see right here, we're approaching the rendezvous point. And right now, basically, when we're overlapping that point, let's just give a short main engine burst and watch DT min, see if it goes up or see if it goes down. Okay, it went up, so we need to do retro engines. Watch DT min go down and try and get it right on 0. Now while you're doing this, bring it down. Oop, that's a little too much. Now you can use your translation thrusters. You can use your translation thrusters to fine-tune this and get this to 0. You want to get this right on 0. Okay, that's good enough. We're kind of past the we're past the rendezvous point right now, so we'll just coast around one more time, and then once we reach the rendezvous point again, we'll do just some final tweaking to get that to 0. But one thing I want to mention, we had to do a retrograde burn to bring DT min down, and you've got to be careful when you do a retrograde burn, because what happened is we did a retrograde burn here, which lowered our orbit altitude over here, and we got to be careful that you don't lower it any lower than 150 kilometers. See, in our case, it only came down to 203 kilometers. That's perfectly fine. If you get any lower than 150 kilometers, then you're going to experience atmospheric drag, and what that will do, when you drag through the atmosphere on the low side over here, it'll actually bring your altitude down on the other side, and you don't want that because we matched our altitude perfectly with ISS over here. So you've just got to pay attention. If you're doing a retrograde burn, watch your PEA altitude, the lowest part of your orbit altitude. Make sure it doesn't drop below 150 kilometers. Especially make sure it doesn't drop into the atmosphere, or you're in big trouble then. So at this point, let's just go ahead and speed time up and coast back around to our rendezvous point, and we'll tweak DT min down to 0. Again, as we approach the rendezvous point, let's go ahead and face prograde. And it's not going to take much. We're just going to use translation thrusters to get DT min from this to 0. And again, if you translate forward and DT min goes up, translate back and it'll come down. And you can use the control key while using your translate thruster keys on the numpad to do small bursts, and you can get it precisely on 0. So here we go. Translate forward brought it up, so translate back. And it's coming down, and we'll get that right on 0. Okay, control key is being used now for small bursts. There's 0.3, there's 0.0. Perfect. Now, DT min is on 0. We have a rendezvous point right here, and what you're seeing right here, this is how many orbits till we get there. 0 is the orbit that we rendezvous on. So we've got another 3 orbits to go, and no more burns to make at this point. Right now we just need to coast around 3 more times until we get on the orbit that we are going to rendezvous on. So we'll come back on the last orbit here just before we rendezvous with ISS. Okay, we're on our final orbit before we rendezvous with ISS here. We can go ahead and pull up over here our docking MFD. Let's hit target. Use your arrow key to go down to ISS, then use the right arrow key, and you can select different docking ports. We'll just select the first one there, and then hit the HUD button right there. Now what that does is that brings up your HUD display for docking, and you can see right here, this is ISS inside this box. We're not close enough yet to see it, but that is your indicator of where ISS is. If we look back here, right there, this is your velocity magnitude. Basically what that is that's the direction that we need to fire our engines to zero out our velocity with ISS. We're catching ISS right now, but once we get real close to ISS, just before we dock with it, we need to zero our velocity with it so that we can just slowly translate towards it and come in for a nice smooth docking. So let's go ahead and face forward again. And we're just gonna speed time up, and somewhere around here is our velocity direction indicator, and we'll see it shortly. It'll start coming towards ISS here. We've still got another orbit to go, so we're just gonna speed time up, and as we make this last orbit, you'll see us start to catch ISS. We're getting closer and closer and closer. And the rendezvous point right here is our closest pass to ISS. So we'll just watch ISS. Half an orbit to go. Over here on the docking MFD, you can see this is our closure speed on ISS, and this is our distance. Okay, here we go. Slow time down a little bit. We're at 10 times speed. This plus right here, that's what I was talking about. That's our velocity direction. And as we approach our rendezvous point, this velocity direction, it looks like it's moving away from ISS right now, and then it'll start to move back towards ISS as you approach your rendezvous point. You don't want to start thrusting yet because you're going to get closer to ISS. Again, your rendezvous point is your closest pass to ISS. So as you approach that, that's when you're going to start. Using your translation thrusters and your retro thrusters to start slowing down and moving towards ISS to get into the docking port. All right, we're still approaching ISS. We're getting really close now. Look at the sync MFD. Here's our rendezvous point. You can see right here where our location is almost totally overlapped with ISS. And we'll just speed time up to 10 times here in the interest of keeping the video kind of short. Normally at this point, I would never speed time up. Take your time doing this. But as we get close to ISS, we should be coming around on the daylight side. So we should be just getting some daylight in time to dock with ISS. And I believe it gives you an hour, I guess, of daylight to make it happen. So just watch your sync MFD. We're approaching the rendezvous point. And as we get close, any time now, basically when our distance here gets to about 10 kilometers, I'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and go to normal time now. But at 10 kilometers, I'll go ahead and face forward and rotate the ship so that the front of the Delta glider is facing ISS, is facing the direction of travel here. And we'll use our retro engines to actually slow down. It makes it a lot easier because you can see yourself, you can see your approach. You don't have to turn around and look behind you. The retro engines in the Delta Glider 4 are plenty powerful enough to do this burn. And you can see this is pointing me right towards ISS. And there it is. So we just kind of want to point, just point your nose over here is fine. These little small little boxes you see out there, that you're actually going to fly through those boxes. Those guide you right into the docking port. So you want to kind of aim for those. Again, we're still not to our rendezvous point, so we're just coasting. The only thing that I've done is rotated the ship around to face ISS. Let me speed time up just a little bit more as we approach ISS. We really don't need the sync MFD anymore because we're here. You can see we're almost to the rendezvous point. So if you want to close it, that's fine. Right now we're mainly going to focus with the docking MFD. Let's go ahead and rotate right on our velocity velocity direction indicator here. And let's get ready to do a retro burn here in just a minute. All right, that's close enough. Let's go ahead and start our retro burn. Now when we're doing our retro burn, you can see our speed right here. Our closure rate on ISS is dropping. Our velocity direction is raising. That's okay. Now it's right on ISS. Let's just translate that right on down here like this, so that we can follow these boxes right into the docking port. You don't want to come right in on ISS. You want to follow these boxes in. And now here comes the sun. Beautiful. Look at that. Okay, let's go ahead and face right side up. Up. All right, we're just about there. Let me speed time up just a little bit here. And once we get inside these boxes, we're just going to zero out our velocity and rotate upwards so we're facing ISS. So let's just start zeroing out this velocity here. That's good. Let's go ahead and rotate up. You see this is telling us ISS is pointing. It's pointing up. ISS is right here. And these boxes you see there's two lines and then one line. The two lines should be up on top of you and the one line underneath of you. So basically the way I'm coming in right now is the way you're supposed to do it. So we just kind of want to roughly get our rotation set and get our translation. We can translate over to the right to get into the box there and translate forward. Or you can just use a quick burst of the engines, the main engines, to get you moving forward. And we just want to kind of get right down in the center of these boxes. Okay, now what you're looking at over here on the docking MFD, you've got an X and you've got a plus. The X relates to your rotational position in relation to the docking port. You want that X to be white and right in the center. So let's rotate to the right, and you see the X moving right there. Now let's rotate up. There we go, it turns white. Now it's in the center. Rotate down just a hair right there. Now translate up. See the plus here? That has to do with translation, and it's high right now. It's telling us we need to go up, and we need to be over to the left a little bit. So we'll translate up more, over to the left a little bit. And you might have to play around with the rotation to keep the X in the center like it is now. It seems to be staying right now. Let's start slowing down a little bit. We still need to come up some. See the X is in the center, the plus it's coming down, but it's still high, and now it's drifting right. So it's telling me I need to come up and I need to come right a little bit. and you just got to play around with it. It just takes a little practice, but really it's not that complicated. Slow down a little bit more for a nice smooth docking.
Docking with space station, let's give it a go.
Oh, okay, well, that was dumb. I forgot to open the nose cone. So I got you here, but don't do the same dumb mistake I did and forget to open your nose cone. Open your nose cone, folks, then dock with ISS. Otherwise, I hope this tutorial was very helpful for you and certainly enjoyable. Thanks for watching.
I remember when